The Cleveland Browns defense was a unit in 2023, but with the second year integration with defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz, the thought process is they could be even better in 2024. Doesn't mean that they still can't find some players to assist in the draft. Your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. We are joined once again by PFF's John Kosko. I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. Join the everyday crowd, subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel, and of course, the show is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150. Win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Hope you all enjoyed. We talked about the offensive side of the ball, the prospects within this class, how they fit the Cleveland Browns. John Kosko waxed poetic about just some of his favorite players in general in the 2024 class on the offensive side of the ball. We're going to do very, very similar here, defensive side of the ball. Now, John, I get spoken to a lot, and a lot of people, ask me, the emphasis on the defensive line, defensive tackle, especially, Jeff. Why? Look, the same conversation we just had about the offensive line, we can kind of look at that and base it on the defensive tackle position as well. The Browns' top 4 defensive tackles this season are going to be 29, 30, 31, and 32 years old. It is a great collective unit, but there isn't much tomorrow in that unit, depending on what you feel of, Siaki Ika. And obviously the best we can say from last year is maybe, an incomplete as far as the 2023 rookie season for the big fella from Baylor. For me, John, maybe it's being spoiled for all the years the Browns did not have defensive tackle play. Now that you have a taste for it, your thirst has been quenched. You just want them all. But looking at this class, and again, factoring age, and there are some things here that would fit for the Browns, and it's a nice position to come into because there will be snaps to be had, but you're not going to ask, and it's always difficult for rookie defensive tackles to come in and hit the ground running, but you're not going to put a big burden on any of these guys you were to bring in that room.
Yeah, they need to get younger. Like it's kind of the same conversation with offensive line, wide receiver, and stuff like that. They need to start hitting on their draft picks that at least are decently quality players that can be rotational pieces at the bare minimum. And they're really not getting that. So, they let Jordan Elliott walk this year because he's not been good with the Cleveland Browns. Siaki Ika, not an inathletic tight, defensive tackle, really, kind of didn't show much in terms of last year. And so it's, you could say it's incomplete. He had only 103 snaps last year. Dalvin Tomlinson, Shelby Harris, Quentin Jefferson, all old guys, all are going to be productive from them this year. And, you hope that Maurice Hurst kind of continues to develop like we saw last year. He was had some really good games and stuff like that, but then he got hurt at the end of the year. And that's kind of been his calling card, is that he shows all these good traits and flashes and then gets hurt. So they definitely need to, again, at this position, need to find a guy. Like they've been targeting guys and, late round 3, sometimes day 4, day 3 or whatever, round 3, late day, day round 4, whatever. They need to hit on these guys. And it's one of those things that like you keep paying for these quality players, and eventually you can't keep paying for these guys, and you need to have the younger guys hit. So yeah, it's a position that's like, it's going to be fine this year, but the future does not look great right now for that defensive tackle.
And, with this class, and I think one thing that's starting to become a trend and changing as far as defensive tackle play, within the NCAA that certainly translates to the NFL is the pass rushing ability. It was always thought that these, guys, as they came on, most of the sacks that they got at the collegiate level will usually clean up, but it's not the case anymore. Some of these guys are very, very established as pass rushers, some so much so that technically they're not maybe viewed as first down players as much as they would be, guys that are going to come in obvious nickel and dime situations to get after the quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. I think you do get, they're not going to be be able to get like a Jurhans Newton or something like that from Illinois. Like an absolute beast for them this year. He's going to be a first rounder, if not maybe even top 10. Type. There's talk of that and everything. So there's a quality defensive tackles in this class, and they're able to win with their athleticism. They're able to win with good pass rush moves where they're actually defeating blocks and getting after the quarterback. So yeah, there's quality in this class, and you can get it in the mid rounds for sure. That potentially could develop into quality talent. It's not a like a high. There's not after Zurhan and then they got Braden Fisk, who's been pretty good. Byron Murphy out of Texas. Those guys are all going to be probably off the board before the Browns pick, and probably Browns aren't going to be targeting defensive tackle high. So I think you've got some later round potential with maybe Tavondre Sweat and McKinley Jackson out of Texas A&M. Guys like Ruko. What is it? Ruko Ohororo. I don't know how to pronounce his last name or whatever, but you got guys in the mid rounds that affect the passer and get after the passer pretty well. Even if you don't have high sack numbers with these guys, you want to see them getting pressure on the quarterback, and you've got a class here that does do that for sure.
And, it matches up well, because the one thing the Browns do have with, the way their defensive line is assembled between tackle and, certainly the end position, it's quality rushers. So, look, if you can get 4, even 5 quality pass rushers on the field consistently, you see the amazing difference it certainly made, for the Browns last year, certainly for, the overall success and appreciation that we've always had for Myles Garrett. But he kind of got to see it a little bit more as the league kind of saw it all work together. Look, people, he's great. No, normally great defensive linemen play with other great defensive linemen, and it just helps them level up, helps them enhance their play. Certainly one of the things that allowed Myles Garrett to do the things he did last year, the creativity that Jim Schwartz was able to bring into it, starting week 1, where, hey, yeah, you want to, do crossover dribbles in front of the guard center gap and attack from there, go ahead, have at it. And it just, allowed for a fun unit, and, having fun starts to taste success, just breeds more success. And it started almost like, a good avalanche, so to speak, for the Browns on the defensive side of the ball, and certainly up front in 2023. Impact position, defensive line. If you only have a chance, for maybe 2 impact players in this draft, 54, 85, if you're the Browns, you're certainly looking at the defensive line market to maybe get some return there. We're going to continue on here. John Kosko in the linebacker unit. It's interesting. Look, guys, I'd love to talk secondary. I just don't know where the guy could even fit in. So we'll talk a little bit of linebacker room, a short group as far as the today and who's going to be maybe an eventual running mate for Jeremiah Usu-Koromoa. Continuing on here on your latest Locked On Browns. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. Appreciate you all who make Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. You don't want in on the everyday crowd. You need to be in on the everyday crowd. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Of course, the show is always available, always free wherever you get your podcasts. We are with John Kosko from PFF. Talked a little defensive tackle position, another linebacker position. And, it's going to be interesting because it's going to go through a little transformation in this room, similar to what the running back room did a few years ago. Yes, analytic teams say we're not really going to pay running backs. We're not really going to pay linebackers, but there's always going to be the break the mold type of guys. Nick Chubb was certainly that player at the running back position. Jeremiah Usu-Koromoa, after a strong season last year where it all came together, D-line helps everything else work. Got things we've been saying for years. And you saw the absolute total JOK experience. Again, John, this class, it's not, nobody's going to go round one. And with that, there are guys who obviously have shortcomings. There are guys that maybe necessarily aren't going to be guys that are going to be on the field for every snap. And that's what it means when you don't have a round one linebacker. But they need to poke around, need to find something, because this is yet another room with the impending contracts coming to JOK. My feeling is there's probably not going to be much more veteran going on there. And I think the Browns would like to start to have the depth and the players along with JOK start to play on rookie contracts.
Yeah, absolutely. Jordan Hicks is going to be a fine player for them this year. They signed Devin Bush. He's not a player that you can really rely on, in my opinion, in terms of a high quality player. Last year he was a 57. He's never graded well in our system at all. So he's Jordan Hicks does, he doesn't, and then you're hoping maybe one of these young guys develops like Mohamed Diabate. Maybe Tony Fields gets better. He did not show very well this past year with a 50.6 grade this year. So you've got guys that they could potentially target in this draft, and which I assume they will, because they definitely are going to need to find another guy for a running mate alongside JOK. It's possible that they could go for like a Peyton Wilson or Edgerrin Cooper at that 54% spot. We've seen them take a high quality pick in JOK at the linebacker position. So it's not out of the question that they could take one of those guys there at pretty high. I guess Peyton Wilson maybe too old for them, and from that standpoint, but he's by most regards the highest linebacker on everybody's boards. Jeremiah Trotter would be another guy that obviously has the name, his dad was in the league and stuff like that with the Eagles and everything. So he'd be a guy that, like, if you want to just get a pedigree guy that that's going to be able to come in and work his butt off and knows, and is a professional or whatever, a lot of times that really kind of matters at that linebacker position. And he's athletic enough, right? So he's a good player. So that would be a guy you'd take maybe round 3, potentially have to trade up into the round 4 type of spot or whatever if you wanted to get him. And then you got Cedric Gray out of North Carolina, which could be easily a round 5 type of guy, and they've got options. And so but it's not a really deep linebacker class. So it's like, if you're going to want one, you're probably going to like a guy a lot and end up taking them. They'll probably target somebody round 6 or something like that, around 5 for what they're looking for.
Now, John, we've done these shows for years, and the Browns have had a propensity to draft players who graded well PFF-wise in college. Granted, Curtis Weaver, Jordan Elliott, some of these guys, it's not necessarily panned out for them. Now, of course, obviously there's correlation, of course, with what works well in college. Can you do it at the next level? What are some of the more difficult things? And we can just go defense in general, where, you guys probably have an eye on a certain grade for a certain skill and say, man, that's a tough one to overcome, because if you couldn't do it in college and now we're going to throw you in the NFL against grown ass men, it's really, really hard to think, that's going to be something that you can just not overcome a little bit. You have to overcome it a tremendous amount to become successful at the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at our grades and what translates and what doesn't, so it's much more predictable for offensive line and defensive line play, because there's constant interaction right there. So there's when you're talking about like secondary, like a cornerback is getting targeted, in college, maybe 50 times in a year or something like that. And there's a lot of variables that can happen with a cornerback, and you can see all the athleticism, you can look at all that type of stuff, but really, like, what are the guy's instincts when the ball's in the air? What's the guy's instincts on being able to recognize routes and stuff like that? So when it comes to offense on defensive line play, like, grades are pretty dang correlated. As the higher the level of competition, the better it is correlated. So like Power 5 conference type, if you're in the SEC, Big Ten type of stuff, like, that stuff generally translates pretty well versus guys in the FCS level for sure, and then like even Group of 5 or just like the MAC West or something like that. So like Boise State, you talk about Curtis Weaver. He's a guy that graded out really well in our system, but when you watch his tapes, kind of like, this guy's not very athletic. He's just kind of beaten up on athletic other offensive tackles and stuff like that. So you have to marry the grade with the tape and stuff like that. And I know in years past, like, guys that have to compile the big board, I have nothing to do with compiling our PFF big board and stuff like that. So like a lot of, it kind of varies in terms of how much they use our grades versus like, kind of match like a game, evaluation standpoint. So there's a lot of variables that kind of do go into things like that. Like you can grade well in college and not be a quality quarterback or NFL type of caliber player, because it just depends on the athleticism. It depends on the competition level and stuff like that. And there's specific traits that do translate in the NFL. So while grade is a part of the tool, it's not everything for sure.
Now, John, with the Browns, bringing back Rodney McLeod, great move in my opinion. Chance to maybe finish what they had started last year with that safety position. Certainly, Grant Delpit with his extension, and it seems to be that everything is turning towards the Browns are going to pick up Greg Newsome's fifth-year option, which I am totally with, because unless we knew what the return would be, you're creating a giant hole by moving on from Greg Newsome, and now basically you're adding to the shopping list. But with that being said, there is some solid secondary play in this 2024 draft class. It just might, however, be one, where the Browns, I'm not going to waste the pick. I may go the UDFA route. Hey, I could maybe snag a Ronnie Hickman, who was a successful player for them last year. But with limited draft capital, and most likely the starting cornerback room, the starting safety room already in Berea, it's good, but it might be one where the Browns are going to have to say, yeah, he's great. I would love to. I just don't have the spot.
Yeah, like you said, I think you love picking corners and stuff like that. You love picking secondary players because the more the better in terms of that. But like as the room sits right now, it'd be hard to fit in another cornerback to the room for sure, because you've got your top three in Ward, Emerson, and Newsome. And then you've got the guy that they drafted last year out of Northwestern, out of the
Cameron Mitchell.
There we go, Cameron Mitchell, who they like obviously, and they signed. They made a free agency signing this year as well in Tony Brown out of from Indianapolis, I believe. Yeah, so like they have guys that they like there. You could definitely add a young guy in a cornerback room, but they would do it at like later in the draft. You're talking about probably 6th round, kind of like where they took Cameron Mitchell. They might do it at the safety position in that regard as well, because really I think you never want to rest your laurels on secondary play, because it's so volatile in the NFL year to year. And while the Browns have all the talent, arguably the best talent in the secondary in the NFL, especially at the cornerback position, I think you can definitely get, especially at that safe position, you got to get younger and make sure that you have guys there that are going to be quality players. Obviously, Ronnie Hickman played well last year, but can you actually rely on that year over year? There's a reason why he was, he went undrafted and stuff like that. So I think, yeah, he played well in a great defense around him. Now, is he going to get that same level of success? If maybe things have a little bit of adversity for them this year.
No question. And look, I like the class, and there's some guys, and you guys know I've been talking about a player out of Mississippi State, to Cameron Richardson. Long, lean, faster than Martin Emerson. I just don't see how it works with all the Browns have, unless they decide to move on from somebody. But for this case, I think the Browns are probably going to stay put. And defensive back is something the Browns are probably going to be more of a viewer as more than a participant in this 2024 class. We're going to continue on here. We did it on the offensive side. We're going to do it on the defense side. We're going to get some of John Kosko's favorites here in the 2024 class, defensive side of the ball. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. Jeff Lloyd, your latest Locked On Browns continues. We always appreciate you for making Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. If you're not part of the everyday crowd by now, make a new plan stand. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. John, now we've gone over obviously defensive line play. We've talked some linebacker and a nice secondary class, and most likely the Browns are just going to be buying the ticket to watch how that all unfolds. But we'll give you your time. We'll give you your due, Mr. Kosko here. Some of your favorites from the defensive side of the ball here. And again, it may not be as deep as the offensive side of the ball is at some positions, but it's certainly got some guys who are going to make a little noise on Sundays, Mondays, Thursdays. I think there's a Friday night game. There'll be guys are going to make noise on every day.
Yeah. This is an offensive draft, I would say, for sure. There isn't the elite level of defensive player that you can.
We might have one edge go round one.
Yeah, and it's like I like some of the edge guys. You're talking about Latu, I don't even know how to pronounce his name, Latu or whatever, out of UCLA. I think he's a very good player, but he's got his off field, like he retired for a year. He's got the injuries, stuff like that. So you have no idea like where that's at. Obviously, Dallas Turner out of Alabama is a really good player as well. But I think if you're talking guys that I really like, that maybe the guy actually has flown up draft boards in recent weeks or whatever is Braden Fiske out of Florida State. I've liked him all along the way. He dominated Senior Bowl. He was obviously a transfer from. It was Michigan State, right? I believe. No, that was Keon Coleman that did that. But he did come in to Florida State after like 3 or 4 years at a different school. If I look at Western Michigan, I knew it was a Michigan school, Western Michigan, and so I was close. It's one of the directional Michigans, So I like him and what he can bring to the table. I know he's on the older side because he's been around the block a few times, but he's probably not going to be on Browns draft boards until probably later in the third round, maybe day 3 or type of stuff. I mentioned him earlier or whatever, McKinley Jackson out of Texas A&M. His in-game athleticism was really, really strong and graded pretty well. He's 76 overall this year. As a pass rush, he was a 70, run defense 76. So it's not like astronomical numbers or anything like that, but he showed well. So and for defensive line, those are kind of the guys I like there. In a secondary, it's hard to see what's going to fall to them and stuff like that. But I do like, if you're talking about a guy that I just like, it doesn't matter where he's going to go. It'd be like Cooper DeJean. I think, he's got to represent us white defensive backs in the NFL. So I have a bias towards that. But if you're talking guys that'll go later in the draft, Andrew Phillips could be out of Kentucky, athletic guy there. Chris Abrams-Drain out of Missouri, another athletic guy, potentially could be available for them as well. You just never know who's going to be available. Jerry and Jones out of Florida State is another guy that I like at that cornerback position too. So, and then the guy that, from a position standpoint, I don't know where I would peg him right now. Maybe I'd want him to play running back because he showed extremely well there. But it's Sione Vaki out of Utah. Like, the dude played both ways at Utah, and whenever he had the ball in his hands, he was explosive with it. So, like, get that guy the ball, and like, he's going to do something. He's just a football player. His instincts in the secondary are a bit questionable, but the guy's athletic, and maybe give him the ball instead of putting him on the defensive side. I don't know, but I just want to do something with that guy. Right now, he's trying to go into be as a safety or something like that, but super athletic and versatile. Maybe he's a special teams ace. Who knows? But I like the guy with the ball in his hands, and so it's the type of guy I'd want on my team.
Well, you look at a guy like that, and with the way they have changed the rules regarding the return game, which is now going to be more of an emphasis. There is a guy that can be certainly involved there. You'd like to get the ball in his hands. Okay, well can I get something out of him? Do the simple things. All right, you got the back out. All right, blitz. There are certainly ways you can find and get use out of it. And look, for a team like the Cleveland Browns, who have a deep roster, to have a guy who's either 52nd guy, 53rd guy, and say, well, you know what? He's out today. He's not playing. This guy can cover a little of that. He can also cover a little of that. He can cover, and, versatility, just like I said earlier, age is a skill. Versatility is a skill within the NFL. Certainly when you're getting down to those final cutdowns, and you can say, well, you know what? This guy is a wide receiver and a wide receiver only. This guy, I've got a list about this long of things that he can do for our football team, which all of a sudden, enhances his opportunity to make the team and just overall, and even still go from going 52 or 53 to be a guy who actually dresses on game day. Browns are in a really, really good spot. And I think the thing that's key here is they have an opportunity to get a little bit of juice, even though this is going to be a small draft class. It's not going to be one where they draft players high, but they can truly be best player available. They can truly be particular and target a couple guys and say, there's a chance 31 teams might be stupid enough just to let this guy roll around 54, 85. And then all of a sudden the Browns just come in, drop the net, and secure that player. So it's always fun from that respect. But John, we're 2 weeks away. We're getting close. We're getting real close.
Yeah, next year it's going to be like much more fun as a Browns fan to do the draft, because what do we got? Like, you have 5 picks this year.
It's been 3 seasons that we've been able to talk about a first round pick.
Yeah. You have 5 picks this year. Maybe they do some trades and stuff like that. They'll have maybe 6 or something, maybe 7. Next year you've got a first, a second, a third, a fourth, 3 6, and 2 7. So you've got your first rounder back, so you've got to work something to do with that. And then they got a lot of day 3 picks that they can make some some more trades with and stuff like that, and maneuver in the draft. So I think next year's will be really fun. It'll be interesting to see how they navigate just only 5 picks this year, because I believe it's the fewest that Andrew Berry's had in his tenure.
Well, I mean, as it stands now, it would be the smallest class, and it'll be a lot of fun hashing about who will be pick overall number 32, wink, wink, for the Cleveland Browns in the 2025 NFL Draft. PFF John Kosko, obviously been a friend of the show, guest of the show for years. Always appreciate the insight, and as many years as now been. There are a lot of conversations between John and I that are nothing even close to football. So, with all this, the work together, the respect, the friendship is certainly formed. So make sure you're following at John Kosko 3. I am Jeff Lloyd, your host here at Locked On Browns. Again, I appreciate you all who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd just keeps growing. I could not be more thankful. Jump on in, join the club by subscribing to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go Browns.